On today's show, we talk about the defeat at Aston Villa. We look forward to the Brentford game with broadcaster and supporter Natalie Sawyer. And we have a great first rant of the podcast from Gary Diamond. Welcome to An Echo of Glory, the Tottenham Hotspur fan podcast that in just 3 weeks seems to have more direction than the very thing we're here to discuss. And to discuss it once again with me are Gary Diamond and Jake Robson. Gentlemen, welcome back. 3 in a row.
Hat-trick of appearances.
Very good.
Very honoured.
Right. Another mad week at Tottenham Hotspur. Another defeat. Give me something positive from your week, please, Gary.
Why do you come to me first?
Because you are Mr. Positive.
Oh, God. I mean, it's been a dreadful week, hasn't it? So finding positivity is hard. Tottenham did serve as a natural painkiller. I had a trip to the dentist. The dentist said to me at one point, you might experience some pain and discomfort. I said, I've just watched Tottenham, mate. So, honestly, I guess another positive thing from this week was going back to a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about debuts. I'm reliably informed from one of my elders, my dad in fact, that the best ever debut for Tottenham was Jimmy Greaves on 16th of December 1961. He scored a hat-trick at home versus Blackpool in a 5-2 win. Right. One of those was a scissor kick, which Jimmy Greaves to his dying day considered to be one of his most spectacular goals.
Right.
So
are you saying that your debut on this podcast was like Jimmy Greaves' hat-trick against Blackpool?
No. I'm saying we have a defined winner of the best debut ever for Tottenham that's going to take some beating, and we have an answer to that question, so slight positive.
Right, so it was Jimmy Greaves, not you, just to confirm.
Fine.
Because I thought your debut was good. I've never seen you score an overhead kick.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm going downhill. I need to up the standards to get back to.
Jake?
But that says something that the most positive thing to happen to you in the last week was actually something that happened in 1963.
61 even.
61.
Jake, a positive from this week, please. Find me something.
I've woken up 3 days in a row.
Okay. But you still support Tottenham?
Yeah.
What happened the other days?
Well, it's the week is only 3.
Oh, okay.
Oh, do you mean the last?
Oh, he's taking it from there.
This calendar week.
All right, but look, you're still here. You're still a Tottenham fan. So that. Listen, I had a positive. Obviously, we're not going to go into depth. Arsenal losing at home to Brighton. We're on the assumption that they're not going to win the league now. But being the Tottenham fan that I am, within 20 seconds, I spun that into a negative. Because I'm watching that game going, this is hilarious. Then I was like, fucking hell, Brighton are so much better than us. So we're going to come on to that.
How about Brighton have beaten Arsenal 4 out of 5 times at the Emirates? We've beaten them once in the league in about 30 years there.
Okay, look.
They're in hybrid.
I was asking for positives. Right, listen. Positive. Brentford at home Saturday. We're going to little mention the junior teams didn't play this week. Season's over. The women have a massive game on Saturday at home to Reading, which if they win, I suspect if they don't lose, they will stay up. That's very important to the women's team. If you've got a ticket for that game, you also have a ticket for the. So if you've got a ticket for the Brentford game, you've got a ticket for the Reading game. I personally will go to both. So there you go. Try and get down for both games on Saturday. Let's go back to last Saturday, Aston Villa. You can lose football matches. No one expects us to win every game. But for me, we lost in the way we've been losing again. We've lost that way 15, 16 times this season. And it's hard to say, Mason's failed his audition. It's a 4 or 5 game audition. But Jake, that was a really disappointing performance. And I personally was disappointed to see us go back to that type of performance.
It was one that we thought that we might have moved away from. Certainly with the Liverpool performance after we went 3-0 down. And certainly the game after that, which completely escapes me what it was. But I remember we played well for
United?
a bit.
Was that the other way around?
The other way around.
It's been a long 4 weeks.
But the fact
Palace.
That was it, Palace. We've had positivity under Mason, haven't we? The way that we've been playing, okay, aside from the goals we conceded, putting those aside, but the way we've been going forward and attacking, which is the one thing that was labelled a lot of the time at Conte and Mourinho as what the Spurs fans wanted us to get back to. Attacking football, a bit more positivity, less of this, wait for them to come onto us and then hit them on the break. We thought that we'd kind of moved away from that. But the problem is that Aston Villa are one of the form sides in the Premier League. And not only that, they're even better at home. So what did we expect in terms of, I suppose the result was probably what we thought. Maybe you're saying the performance, it wasn't.
That's the most disappointing thing.
Yeah, I mean, but ultimately, I'm kind of just, the feeling that I have about it is,
apathy.
Yeah, this is where we are right now.
Gary, you watched it from cover to cover. You were messaging during the game. You were not a happy bunny.
No, I'm gonna pick up on a few things that Jake said as well. There, the result wasn't what we thought. We were sat here last week all predicting.
I predicted a win.
I definitely didn't.
I think you said a draw.
I did say a draw. Hold my hands up, say a draw. It should have been a draw, though.
Oh, I don't know. Gary will tell us.
Well, you can argue it any way. Look, the problem I've got is the performance from the kickoff, as it was against Liverpool, as it was against United, and as it has been so often this season, was disgraceful. It was absolutely disgusting. It truly was. I was spitting watching that performance because there was nothing positive to take from it. And it's been.
I've not seen you this angry since they didn't have Ryan Mason hoodies in the club shop.
You mentioned that there have been 15 or 16 performances like that this season. There have been complete performances of 90 minutes, but there have also been many halves where we've come off at half time. We're all like, what the fuck have I just watched? No shots on goal. Don't like XG as a stat, but 0 XG.
That's embarrassing.
You know, and then we come out the second half and it picks up. It was, for me, a terrible performance, and I'll pick up again that we thought we'd got away from this with Ryan Mason, but I'm going to go back to the Palace game, and we credited Mason for some bold decisions in selection, the dropping of Eric Dyer, the Emerson Royale at right centre back. But I signed off on that performance on this pod as, ironically, it was the most Antonio Conte performance you could wish to see. It was dull, boring, nothing happened, no chances for either team, shit football from beginning to end. Game decided by one moment of decent football. It was Antonio Conte to a T.
All right, so let's talk about that. How much of this is still a fragment of what Conte left in March? There's been extenuating circumstances. We've talked about this. We talked about it with Andy Townsend last week. We've talked about it. The hole in our midfield is ginormous, but nothing really has been done about it. So how much of this is the mud that Conte's left us in?
Well, before the weekend, we conceded 13 goals in the opening 15 minutes, and that was joint most with Bournemouth and Leicester. It's now 14, and obviously Conte was at the helm for a lot of those. Yeah. So you have to say that a lot of that is the leftover from a bit of a hangover from him. But I do think that the way that the end of the season has panned out with interim and then interim manager, I don't know if you can, well, you're not putting it on the players, but I don't know, you're putting it on the players. I don't know if you can expect any more than that based on the fact that realistically, the players are probably thinking to themselves, even subconsciously, they're probably not going out there and thinking this, but subconsciously, where is the direction in this? Where are we going next season? What's going to be the situation over the summer? Who's going to be in charge come the middle of August next season? What's the plan?
Yeah.
And so I think when that creeps into your subconscious and you know that we've got an interim manager for the last 6-7 games of the season, you can see that end point, but then you don't know what's going to be on the other side. So how you can necessarily be expected to just suddenly string all these performances together when they haven't been there in the first place. And I think that is kind of the crux of the problem.
I do agree, but to a point I disagree. You can have new manager bounces, and we've not really had one in 2 interims.
But the problem is in the name.
Interims.
Yeah. We haven't had a new interim manager bounce.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. Okay, Leicester haven't really had a bounce, fine, but it doesn't always happen like that. Look at United last season. When Ralph Rangnick was named as the interim boss in December, the rest of their season was awful. It was a complete write-off, as we saw. The players knew he wasn't going to be there. I mean, he wasn't really a manager to start with. He's a director of football who was kind of given a managerial role. We've seen it before. Yeah. I just don't think it works.
I pointed at Gary.
One last thing. Unless your interim manager is someone like a Goose Hiddink, or I'm not saying that this was the right option, but maybe 10 years ago, a Harry Redknapp, or someone who has got experience for days and years and years. Then I think maybe for 5-6 games, I think you can get a bounce.
I pointed at Gary when you talked about the players. Not that he blames the players. I know we've talked about this, me and him, at length.
Gary's just blaming everyone.
Yeah, well, but I think that's it. And we've talked about.
I do blame everyone. I absolutely do blame everyone.
Yeah, but there are people out there who will just blame the chairman, who will just blame Eric Dyer, who will just blame this one, that one. It's overarching. We're all in this together.
The difficulty is, okay, people want to point the finger at a certain individual. when things go to shit in the way that they've done, everybody has to take responsibility, everybody has to put their hands up, and everybody has to say that I could have done a better job. And we, looking out inwardly from the outside, can say, oh, he should have done this or that. And people develop their agendas. The realities are these, okay? Daniel Levy has made a lot of mistakes, and we will get into that in a great deal more detail.
Yeah, we'll do a summer special. We'll do some summer special.
We'll get into all of that, okay? Yeah. Daniel Levy has made mistakes. Yeah. He absolutely is to blame for what is going on at the minute. So is the medical team. So is the recruitment team. So are the people that are advising Daniel Levy. So are the coaching staff, and so are the players. But on the issue of Conte, I feel as though once the transfer window is closed, once the business is done, once the squad is in place, you have what you have. There are no managers that have, apart from Pep Guardiola, there are no managers that have the absolute squad that they want, okay? And they all get on with it. And what they do is they find solutions to the problems. They find ways to augment the strengths of the team and the squad, and they cover up the deficiencies and the weaknesses.
Yeah, you look at Pep, I argue that they didn't really know how to play with Haaland to start with. They've dropped him in a little bit. He's put Stones in midfield. De Zerbi's put Jason Steele in goal from absolutely nowhere. He was the most second-choice Premier League goalkeeper you could see. He's a bench warmer, taking crosses in the warm-up for the number one. Coming because he can play. Dan Burn, left back for Newcastle. Things can be done. I totally agree with you, Gary. Once the window's closed, it's down to you to make something happen. And it never happened. And we've just been a malaise throughout the entire season since the World Cup.
We have. And look, you know, we're getting to Daniel Levy and all of that in a few weeks. But you asked about Conte and how much of this is left over from Conte. And I want to get into this a little bit because I harbour huge resentment and anger towards Antonio Conte. And it starts here, okay? Harry Kane spoke last week about there being a disconnect between the team and the fans. And he's right, there is. But there's a disconnect at all levels of this club at the minute. And it is never, ever more emphasised than they still play before the games on the big screen, on the big sort of call to arms before the games. They still play. It's about winning with style. It's about winning with a flourish. They play that.
Way,
to dare is to do, and this is born out of the history of the club. This is the call to arms, the rallying cry before we go out on the pitch. And you sit there and watch us
sit in
and do nothing. Nothing. It is the exact opposite of what Tottenham Hotspur Football Club is. And this is what has happened under Mourinho and Antonio Conte in particular. And people will say, well, maybe it's the players, maybe it's the players. I'm going to cite the performance, the one positive from the weekend. The one positive, because there weren't any really. The one positive was Yves Bissouma, who came on and was, for me, absolutely phenomenal. He came on in his first post-Conte appearance for Tottenham and looked like the Bissouma
that we wanted.
That when Gary Jokers broke the news, I looked at it and I was like, Jesus, that's a proper signing. Yeah. Never mind 25 million. It could have been 70 million. Wouldn't have mattered. That's a proper signing. And then this geezer turned up and Conte's bitching about him. He comes on the pitch. He doesn't look like he's played the game before. This Bissouma came on the pitch, released of the shackles, released of the responsibilities of what Conte had been putting on him, and he looked like the player that we'd bought. He was demanding the ball. He was taking it in tight areas. He was press resistant. He was playing it forwards. He was breaking the lines. His first pass was directly through the Villa defence to Son, who was offside again. You know, he was phenomenal. Phenomenal. And I thought about it, and I thought to myself, well, why? Why is this? And it was clear. He'd broken free of the Conte shackles. And then I thought to myself, well, the moments that I've enjoyed watching Tottenham this season, madly, have been when we've been chasing games, when we've been behind, and when we've come out of our shell and we've started to come at teams. The comeback against Bournemouth, the comeback against Brentford, the comeback against Leeds.
But we don't want to be in that situation.
But this was when Tottenham was playing football that Tottenham should be synonymous with. Aggressive, front foot, football, going at teams. And we showed in these moments, actually, that we have more than enough about us to blow teams away. We fucking did it to Liverpool at Anfield the other week, right? And people
showing more passion on this pod than the team on the pitch.
And people will say, but that wasn't Conte. That was a Conte performance, okay? Up until the point when we had nothing to lose. When we had nothing to lose and we broke free of his shackles, suddenly we were a team, okay? And people will say, well, what about the end of last year when we went on that run? Yeah, okay. When did that happen? When did that happen? It happened after the actual typical Conte performance away to Burnley, a pathetic 1-0, in which we did fuck all again, right? It's true. We did nothing in that game. Conte came
Had a
out,
rallying cry, like
Conte
yours, like
came out,
this.
had his little meltdown,
Yeah.
right? And then we went on a run of played 14 league games, won 10, drew 2, lost 2, 438 against 8. And how do we do it? Free of the shackles. We've got nothing to lose. We can't get Champions League now, so we're going to fucking go for it. And they did. And then as soon as there was something to lose again at the beginning of this season, the shackles came back on. She must have been put on by Conte. Has to be the way he played. And it's highlighted in the fact that in Yves Bissouma, for example, we spoke just earlier about the strengths of a team and how managers look for the strengths. You've got Yves Bissouma there, right? I'm looking at that, going, you played Bissouma alongside Bentancur. Okay, and you might say, all right, that might leave us a little bit, exposed at the back, potentially. But what does it do for the team? It means we've got 2 press-resistant midfielders that we can get the ball into. It means we can retain possession.
We talked about this yesterday. If you play someone like Bissouma and Bentancur who like to go forward, Pochettino did this with Dembele and Eriksen. Yes. Dembele wasn't the most attacking player, but he would go forward. Eric Dyer stepped into midfield if we lost a midfielder forward. There's been nothing. On the face of it, there's been nothing to try and change this team.
All he did was exaggerate the weaknesses of our team and hide our strengths until such time as we're lost and we may as well go for it. Right? It's disgusting from his and then he let the house burn on his way out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't blame the players in this season. Okay, I can look at Dyer and Sanchez and Lloris and these players who historically have been. We know they should have gone a long time ago, but am I going to look at Bissouma and go, this guy's been a failure, or Richarlison, or Kulusevski, or Son, and go, he's turned shit?
We don't know, do we, until they've been played properly.
Can't judge them, but I blame Conte wholeheartedly.
So Gary's going to go for a lie down, Jake. But that's the passion, and this is the club we love, and we've all been really, really, really pissed off this season. I think that's just a sign of how frustrated we all are. So Conte's gone, Stellini's gone, Mason. Again, I'm not going to say he's failed his audition, but I think we probably assume he's not going to be the manager. Where do we go, Jake? The managers we've been linked with: Slot at Feyenoord, Amorim at Sporting, managers without jobs: Potter and Brendan Rodgers. I think we need a manager on the way up, and for me, that would be Slot. They play very, very good football. They were brilliant at AZ Alkmaar. They would have or could have won the league in the COVID season, but it was null and void. They were level on points with Ajax. They've won the league this year. Amorim, not 100% sure. They were okay when we played them. We let them beat us over there in the Champions League. Potter, yes, if he'd come straight from Brighton, but I think there's a bit of an issue there. And Rodgers, no, not for me. So where are you, Jake?
I honestly, and I've thought this since Conte left, and even when Poch for us was still a possibility. Obviously, for the club, it was never a thing. I'm just a bit nonplussed as to who we get, because I think that, and this may be really blindsided, but I think whoever comes in will be basically, this is what's going to happen. We're going to get a new manager in the summer. That Tottenham we will buy a couple more players, maybe 3, 4, who knows. Last summer we bought in 5, so you never know. We'll get a new director of football, and some players will leave. And I think at the beginning of the next season, as long as the manager is installed, in good time.
That's the other question.
Well, okay, but as long as that happens, I think we'll be back to where we want us to be, where we hope we should be. I think we'll be playing good, winning football.
That's what we want.
Toward at the beginning of next season, or if not at the beginning, but soon after. And I think that next season we will be competing for top 4. We may not finish.
You say
fourth.
that. You see, I have a concern here, Jake. I think next season is going to be massively overcrowded.
Absolutely.
This season, if the current top 4 finishes as the current top 4, it's the first season in Premier League history that 3 teams have gone into the top 4 that weren't in it last season.
Yes.
It's the biggest change in the guard in the Premier League. So we've got Brighton, Brentford, who we'll come on and talk about, Villa, who may or may not be in the mix, but I think we have to be considered. Chelsea are going to probably be better. I think it is so crowded, and I do have a concern we slip a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm not saying we'll finish 4th. I'm saying we'll be in the mix next season. And I think it's as simple as that. You get a new manager in, we'll reset. as long as they buy the players that suit the style of play that new manager wants to play, that has to happen. I think next season we'll start, and I think we'll be fine. I mean, that's just the way I see it. Any one of those managers are decent enough for me. I'm not really like, yes, got to have him, don't want him.
Yeah.
I think any of them come in, as long as the club and the manager are on the same page, the players are bought that suit his style of play, the players are got rid of that don't suit his style of play. That, there's some alignment there. I think we'll be back to it. That's the way I see it.
Alignment is key.
I just don't see it as, on one of the WhatsApp groups I'm in, somebody said to me, we're going to be like Southampton, we're going to be circling the plug hole. I said to him, are you mad? We still have a lot of good players at the club. As we've discussed last week, the new manager comes in, we'll get some kind of bounce. Everyone will be singing from the same hymn sheet, hopefully. And that's just how I see it. Do you think that's really too idealistic?
I think the key is alignment. We've got to finally bring a manager in and go with what he wants.
We were, this time last year, I know Conte complained afterwards, but the players were brought in to fit the system that he wanted to play. So we can't deny that. They signed 5 good players. Bissouma, okay, he hasn't been given much of a chance, but even Fraser Forster's turned out, now look at...
Probably our best sign.
So actually, those 5 signings we made, the club backed the manager. They were aligned on the same page. Obviously, it completely went south, and we know how it ended. But at this time last year, they were, once the season was finished, everyone, it felt like, was on the same page.
Yeah, and that goes back to Gary's brilliant rant. That it really has just fallen apart. Gary, where are you on the next manager appointment?
I definitely don't think Jake's unrealistic. I don't think we're as far off as people say. I mean, the idea that we're going to go down the plug hole like Southampton is absurd.
But let's not forget, we were. I mean, I'm not whether he had to go or not is right. We were 4th not that long ago. So you're right. I agree with you. I think we're not that far off.
Yeah. We're not that far off, and one of the things that upsets me most is that when we play to our true philosophy and we go at teams, we're still better than most of these teams. We've shown it coming from behind. We've shown it when we've had to step it up this season. That's what frustrates me most at the minute. So if we have a manager that goes back to what Tottenham Hotspur should be, and this all goes back to the age-old question that Spurs fans always ask, would we sacrifice great football for terrible football if it meant winning a trophy? Can't ask that question anymore. We've been there, we've seen it. It doesn't necessarily win a trophy, and actually it's dreadful, right? So let's get back to our core. Let's play good football. Let's be on the front foot. Let's be synonymous with what Tottenham Hotspur should be, to dare us to do. And I think what I do like about the manager list that I've seen is most of them are possession-based managers who want to play on the front foot, who want to control the game. I'm disappointed, I have to be honest, and we're going to talk about Brentford a little bit more. I am disappointed to see Frank on the list. I rate him very highly, but he's the only manager that seems to be out of kilter by way of the style of football.
Yeah, they don't play that possession football.
No,
he's very direct.
He seems to be out of kilter with the other managers, and it does make me think, well, is this just a bit hit and miss?
I think that link is because we're playing them Saturday.
I hope it's not Frank. Look, I like Frank a lot. I think he's a fantastic manager. Do I want him at Tottenham? No. And if he is on that list, then it does seem is there any thought going behind this? Another disappointment for me this week, just on the topic of managers, is the Julian Nagelsmann issue, because actually I can't get my head around this this director of football issue. Okay, if Nagelsmann is not coming because we don't agree to the director of football that he wants, then what the hell are we actually doing? Because Nagelsmann plays a style of football that we should be synonymous with. Nagelsmann coming in is exciting because he'll get us playing a brand of football that we should be excited about. And presumably he would be recommending directors of football that would promote that brand and support that brand. Yeah. Whether or not Nagelsmann works shouldn't actually matter, because if he's promoting a director of football that promotes that brand, then actually that's the philosophy of the club going forward. So I don't understand why we would say to Nagelsmann, no, we're not getting that guy. Do everything to get that guy, because that guy you can build around a philosophy in the future. I don't understand.
Well, yeah, I know what you're saying, but the problem is that you can't have the manager choosing like just on any level. You can't. I just don't see how you can have the manager choosing the director.
Do you not? The problem with it is if he goes and he wants to leave.
What if Nagelsmann, he probably was looking, if he was going to ever come, would have looked at us as some kind of stepping stone. So you know that it's not going to be here for 10 years, and then you're left with the director of football.
I understand
that was the old guy's man.
No, I
agree. I think the club, the foundations of the club come first, and you stick the manager on the top.
I get that. I understand that, and I think in essence you're right. My point is, whoever comes in as director of football should be there for the foreseeable 5, 10, 15, 20 years, developing a philosophy and a style of play. Now, if Nagelsmann recommended a particular director of football that he wanted, I get the complications around that. But how much does it matter? Because if Nagelsmann goes, the director of football should still be there, developing and bringing in the right players to suit the sort of philosophy of the club.
It may be that the Paratici-Conte situation, they felt that they didn't want one of the, because obviously Paratici came in last summer. Conte was already here.
Paratici was already here.
Paratici was already here.
Yeah, sorry.
Other way around.
Yeah, the other way around. But it doesn't. The point stands. Maybe they don't necessarily. Maybe Daniel Levy feels that he doesn't want a sort of them versus. He doesn't want a sort of 2v1 in that situation.
Get over it. You're bringing in.
But that's not to say that there isn't another good enough director of football out there who fits the mould of the style of football that we want to play, who will then work well with any one of those managers.
Of course, but it's not going to be Julian Nagelsmann.
No, but so what?
But
we've just seen. But that's the thing. That's my point. There's that list of guys out there. Whoever it is, I'm saying, is he tangibly, markedly, definitely better than any of the others?
Well, this is the conversation that we had last week on this very pod, isn't it? Right? Is I made the case, and I think we agreed that Julian Nagelsmann was head and shoulders as a name above the other managers. And if it's going to be the other managers, hell, could be Mason. I mean, I don't want it to be Mason. I don't think Mason's ready at all. I think we all agree on that. But the point is, none of the other managers inspire me or excite me. None of the other managers seem like managers that I go, do you know what? I think Harry Kane stays for this guy.
But we've had
Nagelsmann and he was there and he was available.
But how pleased were you when we got everybody? You will not find a Spurs fan that wasn't pleased when we got Conte. And I think they're lying if they tell you. They might have said this is going to end in tears, and they're now saying, look how it ended in tears. Everybody was happy with Conte. Mourinho probably split opinion. I don't disagree with the appointment. I don't think it was as bad as Conte. I think Nagelsmann would be a dangerous appointment. Another man who comes in and goes, look at me, I've won this at Bayern, do what I do and you'll win the title. I don't think we need that.
Yeah, and also, you know what, when I read the tweets the other day saying basically that he's ruled himself, I don't even know which side it came from. Did Tottenham say that?
Well, no one really knows.
No one really knows. And I just thought, it's great. Off then, who cares?
We want a man that wants to be here.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want anyone there who feels like he's doing us a favour. And actually, that is why the Poch situation, the first time around, possibly worked out so well, because he was somebody coming up.
He was on the way up.
And that is why somebody like maybe not a Potter now, but whoever that next person is.
I think that would have worked from Brighton. I don't think it works from Chelsea.
I think you're spot on.
I think, essentially we're saying the same thing. The overriding thing in this appointment has got to be that the club sets a strategy and a philosophy that they see through, come what may. Whoever the manager is should slot into that philosophy. And therefore I'm disappointed about Nagelsmann just because it was a big name. I think he carries a big reputation. I think it would have really given the club a huge lift.
But I think whoever the new manager is will give the club a lift, because we can't go any. It doesn't feel like we can go much lower at this point. So that's what I'm.
Did Nuno give you a lift? We came out. We've got to be careful.
I don't know. I was maybe on my own because I thought he'd done a good job at Wolves. Obviously, how it turned out, I thought the way that he had played with Wolves. I mean, the achievement. I mean, he was sort of. He wasn't quite on that Poch level, but in terms of taking a team and getting the absolute most out of a team that you could get, he got Wolves promoted as champions. He then got them, I think it was
into Europe.
2 seasons running. One of them, so he got Wolves into Europe off the back of coming up, and then he played the first season in the Premier League and in Europe and got them to Europe again. And then they had a bad season after that. Personally, I thought, well, I'll take him. The problem with him was that everybody knew he was about the 6th choice. So I think if he'd been the first choice, I think it could have turned out. Okay. It could have potentially turned out.
Which is what we don't need this.
Which is what we don't need this again. 100%.
Right. So one manager that you've mentioned and that has been linked this week is Thomas Frank. We are now going to talk about him and his club with someone who knows them very well. Delighted to be joined on the show by broadcaster and Brentford fan Natalie Sawyer. Natalie, thanks for coming on.
Absolute pleasure. Nice to be with you all.
We're going to look at Saturday's game shortly, but I wanted to start by discussing Brentford, a club that we look at and see a club with a plan, a philosophy, a vision, the complete antithesis of Tottenham Hotspur at the moment. And I wanted to get your insight, firstly, on what it's like to be a Brentford fan right now, but also the key figures at the club and how they've come together and shaped the club into what it is at the moment.
Well, for the first part of your question, being a Brentford fan right now is it's a dream, really, and it's a joy because the results are speaking for themselves. We're going to finish in the top 10 this season, so that's an improvement on last season, especially when everyone talks about the second season syndrome, which may well be a bit of a myth, but anyway, still. So yeah, this season has gone brilliantly for Brentford. We're really enjoying it. And as for the people behind the scenes, maybe who, as you mentioned, are part of this vision and plan and strategy. Obviously, there's Thomas Frank, our head coach, and then we've got Phil Giles, our director of football. Then overseeing him, we've got Lee Dykes, who is part of, again, the sort of transfer strategy, but he's overlooking the whole thing with the Brentford B team as well. So they would be the three most important people when it comes to the strategy of Brentford Football Club. But of course, there's also the owner, Matthew Benham, and it all started with his vision when he took over the club towards the late 2000s. So yeah, there's lots to be positive about with Brentford right now.
Yeah.
So, Natalie, I mean, it is a fantastic time to be a Brentford fan. But thinking about Tottenham, and it would be remiss of us to not mention the links with one of those key people, Thomas Frank, this week. From a personal point of view, I don't see why Thomas Frank would leave Brentford to come to Tottenham, leave Brentford with such strategy and organisation, such a strong reputation that he's built, to come and risk that all at a bit of a basket case like Tottenham at the moment. But imagine that he does take leave of his senses and did come to Spurs. What would we be getting in Thomas Frank? What could he bring to the club? And do you think he could be the right person for Spurs?
Well, do you know what? First of all, what you get with him is passion. And I think we all adore him for that. He has brought a sense of unity as well, from not just within that squad, but with everybody. So, we always do a lap of honour every home game. And in fact, obviously, every away game, they'll always go to the away fans as well, the team. But that came about through Thomas Frank and knowing that he needed to have a connection between the fans and the team. And because we are a small club still, it's important for us to have that relationship, I think. But I'm sure he would want to have that connection with the fans as well. So he would want to bring that into Tottenham, I'm sure. And plus, hearing and speaking to some of the players like I have done, they just all talk about what a wonderful person he is and what a great manager he is. He's one that listens and he takes on board people's opinions. It's not just all solely about him. He has his leadership group, which I know a lot of football teams do have. But I think he genuinely listens to them and he genuinely wants to have their opinion just so everything works harmoniously. And clearly that's something that isn't quite right at Tottenham. Doesn't seem to be that harmony. And I think that's something we have in abundance at this club, which is helping to prove successful.
Natalie, I mean, personally, having been to a couple of his press conferences, Tottenham may well want him, but I just don't see at the moment that he would want to leave Brentford. But at some point, he's obviously not going to stay there forever. How far do you think he can take Brentford? What's the sort of ceiling of where they can get to under him?
I suppose next season will be interesting if he does stick around. And there is obviously the Ivan Toney ban. There are going to be some players leaving. We're expecting our goalkeeper David Raya will leave this summer, who's been linked, I guess, with you guys before as well. It will be about how we kick on. And if we can kick on, because this season has been brilliant and we have flirted with the idea of Europe. I don't think we'd be ready for Europe if that would have happened for us anyway. But I think he probably would like to see us just continue that upward trajectory that we've been on and maybe finish in the top, who knows where we're going to finish this season anyway. But if we were to get just a little bit further up the table and continue to pull off those shock results that we've had this season, because we've had some incredible game days and some incredible results. The last thing we want is to go into next season and for us to not be able to continue those kind of similar sort of results. So I think that's what Thomas Frank will look to do. He'll want to make sure that we continue to cause problems for other teams like we have done this season. And I think that's still a very strong aim to have, because it will only be our third season in the Premier League. And it's one I'm looking forward to, but equally we know that every other team that's kind of faltered this season are probably going to come back stronger this next season.
You've always caused us problems, certainly at Brentford. Game on Saturday at the new stadium here at Tottenham. You talk about the lap of honour they do after the game at every game at Brentford. We're going to do one at Spurs on Saturday because it's the last home game of the season. Some fans will probably call it a lap of dishonour. But you talk about where you're going to finish this season. You win on Saturday, every chance you could finish above us. We've had a couple of European shootouts recently against Newcastle. against Liverpool, against Villa. We've lost them all. So how do you see Saturday's game? Are you going? And if so, how do you see it panning out?
Yeah, I will be there. I will be in the away end. I'm weirdly, I don't know if I'm optimistic. That's probably never the right word, because even though as I mentioned already, we have pulled off some incredible results. There's something about Tottenham at Tottenham that I'm always worried about. I don't know why, but I just am. And maybe because that London derby element as well. But we are playing with some good confidence. We had a great win over West Ham, but I will give the caveat of that there were a lot of changes that David Moyes made to that game. So as much as we came away thinking that was a real solid, complete performance, it was the wholesale changes. So that wasn't their strongest team. That being said, we have beaten Liverpool, we have beaten Manchester United, and we've been the only team to beat Manchester City in their own backyard. So there's absolutely no reason why we can't go to Tottenham thinking we could do exactly the same, especially when it's not all right within that Spurs squad. So there might be some areas that we might look to exploit, perhaps.
And you absolutely can, because Tottenham are very, very fragile at the moment. Natalie, thanks for coming on. Great to talk to you about Brentford. Enjoy Saturday, maybe not too much, but enjoy the facilities and enjoy the game. And again, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Natalie.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie.
Fabulous.
Great. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No worries. Catch you all soon.
See you soon.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. Great to hear Natalie's thoughts on Brentford. I'm looking forward to the game Saturday. Last one of the season. Hopefully we turn up. Jake, you going?
I am going. I was surprised to hear what Natalie said about the trepidation that she's perhaps feeling going to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I used to feel the sort of opposite of that. Every game we go into, until this season, I felt every game we went into, we had a chance. I've had that feeling as a Tottenham fan for about 10 years, since Redknapp days. You knew that in the big games, I'm not saying we won't beat Brentford, but just that point she made resonated with me. We went to the Arsenal game this year.
I was going to say that, the Arsenal.
It was the first time in 10 years where we've gone into a big game
Felt so flat.
at home, where I was stood downstairs having a beer with a couple of mates, and I said to them, it's the first time in 10 years where we're going into a big game.
Conte tax.
And I'm worried.
Out of interest, when you were having that beer, did you see that donut?
I didn't see that donut.
It's bloody donut.
I didn't know about the donut, though. Now I know about the donut.
The other reason I'm looking forward to Saturday is I'm going for that donut.
Extra early.
Extra early. Gary, Saturday, you going? Talk to me about it.
I am. I'm taking my daughter, so I'm really excited to go with her. And if she's not completely bored out of her mind at the end of the game, then she might agree to stay for the women's game after. So I'm hoping to do that.
Well, I don't think she'll see goals.
Yeah, there'll be goals.
It's not going to be 0-0, you know that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Palace was a dreadful game of football. I was thinking of taking her to that game, and I'm pleased that I didn't.
How old's your daughter?
She's 7.
Will you be swearing as much at the game as you have done today?
It's the passion. You should see him in the stadium. They might be without Ivan Toney, but actually they've not lost a game without Toney this season. I think they beat Liverpool without him. He's had a bit of a knock this week. Predictions, please, Jake Robson.
I think we might win 2-1. I don't think Brentford are that good away from home.
No, they're not. Gary Diamond, prediction?
Sorry, anything less than 3 points is another disgrace.
I'm not going to give a prediction because I predicted last week that we'd win and we lost, and I've predicted twice in a row that we're going to win, and I cannot do it 3 times in a row.
No, you will.
I will. Yeah, it's going to be 1-1. And I do. Yeah, and I also worry about what's going to happen post-match. I hope people people will stay, because maybe they're doing the Reading, so people will stay and clap them off, but they're going to do that lap of honour / dishonour. I hope people
I think
are
people
there.
will stay because they will want to become the body language experts looking at Harry Kane.
I was going to say, we're going to hear buzzwords on Twitter that I'm going to mute the words on Twitter. Kane, wave, goodbye. I'm going to mute those words on Twitter, because all we're going to see from Saturday afternoon onwards was that Harry Kane's final wave to the Tottenham.
It's amazing how many body language experts there are out there.
Just lastly, I think I know we sort of touched on it before, it's a perfect idea to have the men's game at the 12:30, the facilities at the stadium. You can go, you can finish the game, have a couple of drinks, which they allow you to do normally anyway. But this time, instead of going home, you can actually go back out.
I think it's a great idea.
Fantastic.
It's absolutely brilliant.
And I hope it happens more often. Obviously, the 3 o'clocks make it.
I'd quite like it to happen the other way around. The women first and the men later.
Yeah.
Would be better.
Yeah. But it's a good idea from the club. Gents, another great show. passion this week. With 3 games in, I feel like we're starting to bond and really get the passion.
Almost the opposite, though. Starting to tear lumps out of each other.
Yeah, but, you know, we'll die for this club.
Bleed white.
Bleed white, like Ryan Mason. Listen, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, follow us wherever you do your social media, and up the Spurs.